The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams when Zoya walked in with her entourage. I was working on my heavy bag, trying to sweat out another day of watching my marriage crumble in slow motion. The sound of heels clicking on concrete made me pause mid-jab. "Hayes, we need to talk." Zoya's voice carried that crisp authority she'd perfected since her promotion at the law firm. Behind her stood 3 of her closest friends, women who looked at me like I was a stain on expensive furniture. I unwrapped my hands, taking my time. "About what?" She slid a thick document across my workbench, right between my wrench set and the stack of unpaid bills. "Sign this, or it's over." The prenuptial agreement sat there like a loaded weapon. Her friends exchanged glances, barely containing their amusement. Jennifer whispered something to Ashley, who covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. The third one, Melissa, just stared at me with undisguised contempt. "A prenup?" I picked up the document, feeling its weight. "After 8 years of marriage?" "It's a precaution," Zoya said, her tone suggesting I was an idiot for questioning it. "Everyone does it now. Times change, Hayes. People need protection." I flipped through the pages without really reading them. The legal language blurred together. Clauses about asset division, spousal support limitations, property rights. Instead, I focused on the date stamp in the corner. Filed 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of preparation while I'd been wondering why she came home late every night. "Protection from what?" I asked. Ashley snorted. "From gold diggers, obviously." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, a mechanic who owned a failing garage, being called a gold digger by women who spent more on handbags than I made in a month. But I kept my mouth shut and reached for my phone instead. "Who are you calling?" Zoya demanded. "My lawyer." The laughter died instantly. Jennifer's smile faltered. Ashley's eyebrows shot up. Even Melissa looked surprised. My lawyer, Tom Brennan, answered on the second ring. "Hayes, everything okay?" "Tom, remember that file we discussed? The one you've been working on. The surveillance report. Yeah, it's complete. Messages, hotel receipts, access logs, calendar overlaps. Everything you asked for. Why?" I looked directly at Zoya as I spoke. "Can you forward the summary to my wife's email? She's here with some friends, and I think they'd find it interesting." Zoya's face went pale. "Hayes, what are you—" "Sure thing," Tom said. "What's the email address?" I rattled off Zoya's work email, the one connected to her phone, the one she'd been using to coordinate those late nights. "Send it to the group thread if you can. The one with Jennifer Martinez, Ashley Chen, and Melissa Thompson." "Hayes, stop," Zoya said, but her voice lacked conviction now. "Done," Tom said. "Should be in their inboxes now." The next 30 seconds felt like an eternity. 4 phones buzzed simultaneously. Jennifer looked at hers first, her expression shifting from amusement to confusion to shock. Ashley's jaw dropped. Melissa actually gasped. Zoya stared at her screen, her face cycling through emotions faster than I could track them. Denial, anger, fear, desperation. "This is," she started, then stopped. "Comprehensive," I finished. "Tom's very thorough. Hotel receipts from the Marriott downtown, text messages with timestamps, even that calendar entry where you marked our anniversary as busy, but somehow had time for drinks with Darren Wilder." Jennifer's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the concrete floor. Ashley backed toward the door. Melissa just stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Hayes, let me explain." "No need." I picked up the prenup and held it out to her. "You brought rules. Here's mine. I don't sign documents under false pretenses." "You're being paranoid," Zoya said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. "This is just a precaution. Everyone gets prenups now." I gestured to her friends, who were studying their phones with the intensity of archaeologists examining ancient scrolls. "Ask them if their husbands needed precautions." Ashley cleared her throat. "Maybe we should go." "Good idea," I said. "Zoya and I need to discuss this privately." As her friends filed out, Jennifer whispered something to Zoya that I couldn't catch. But I saw Zoya's response, a sharp shake of her head and a look that could freeze water. When we were alone, Zoya tried a different approach. "Hayes, we can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this." "Like what? Honest?" She flinched. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. The only question is what you want to do about it." Zoya stared at the prenup in my hands, then at her phone, then back at me. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave. Take your document and your rules and get out of my garage. This is my house too. For now." She tried to grab the prenup from my hands, but I stepped back. "I'm not signing this, Zoya, and I'm not pretending I don't know what's been going on." "Fine." She straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some dignity. "But this isn't over, Hayes. You can't prove anything that matters. We'll see. After she left, I sat on my workbench and called Tom back. How bad is it? I asked. For her? Pretty bad. For you? Depends on what you want to do about it. The evidence is solid. Hotel receipts, text messages, even some financial irregularities that might interest her firm. Financial irregularities? Company credit card used for personal expenses, dinners, hotels, gifts, all tied to dates when she was supposedly working late. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Tom, I think it's time we played by her rules after all. The next morning, I woke up to find my car keyed. Someone had dragged a sharp object along the entire driver's side, leaving deep gouges in the paint. Tucked under the windshield wiper was a note written in block letters. Stay out of our way. I photographed everything before touching the note. Tom had taught me that documentation was everything in situations like this. The handwriting looked masculine, aggressive, Darren Wilder making his presence known. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoya. We need to talk. Meet me at Rossetti's at noon. Rossetti's was an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where Zoya liked to be seen. I texted back, counteroffer, Murphy's Diner, same time. Murphy's was a blue-collar joint near my garage, with vinyl booths and coffee that could strip paint. Not exactly Zoya's scene, but that was the point. She was already there when I arrived, looking out of place in her designer suit among the construction workers and truck drivers. I slid into the booth across from her, noting how she'd positioned herself with her back to the wall. You look tired, I said. I wonder why. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. Hayes, this has gone far enough. Has it? Because from where I sit, we're just getting started. What do you want? Money? I can arrange something. I want the truth. How long has it been going on? Zoya glanced around the diner, clearly uncomfortable. Does it matter? It matters to me. She sighed. 6 months, maybe 7. Since your promotion. It's not connected. Isn't it? New job, new salary, new boyfriend, new rules for the husband who's suddenly not good enough. That's not fair. I laughed, drawing looks from the next booth. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you wanted out before you started playing house with Darren. Fair would have been divorce papers instead of a prenup designed to leave me with nothing. The prenup was his idea, she said quietly, but you went along with it. I thought it would be cleaner this way. Cleaner for who? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to go home, pack your things, and move in with Darren. Or get your own place. I don't care which. You can't kick me out. It's my house, too. Actually, it's not. The deed is in my name, remember? You insisted on keeping your maiden name for professional reasons, said you didn't want to be tied down by legal entanglements. Funny how that works out. Zoya's face went white. You can't be serious. I'm serious. You have until Friday. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Tom's email was already composed, addressed to her boss and the partners at her firm. The subject line read, Potential Ethics Violation, Zoya Haldenor. Then this gets sent, along with all the supporting documentation, hotel receipts charged to the company card, text messages sent during billable hours, meeting schedules that don't match your claimed whereabouts. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice, same as you gave me with that prenup. She stared at the phone for a long moment. What about Darren? What about him? He won't just let this go. Let what go? I haven't done anything to him, yet. The word yet hung in the air between us like a threat. Zoya finished her coffee and stood up. I'll need more than 3 days. You'll have exactly 3 days. After that, things get complicated. That evening, I drove to Uncle Pete's boxing gym. Pete had been my trainer since high school, back when I thought I might make something of myself in the ring. Now the gym was my refuge, the only place where things still made sense. Pete was working with a young kid on the speed bag when I walked in. He looked up and grinned. Hayes! Heard you've been having some domestic troubles? News travels fast. Jennifer Martinez's husband drinks here sometimes. Says his wife came home yesterday looking like she'd seen a ghost. I started wrapping my hands. Something like that. Want to talk about it? Want to hit something instead? Pete nodded toward the heavy bag. Have at it. But remember what I always told you about fighting angry. Don't swing wild. Wait for the opening. And don't let them see you coming. I spent an hour working the bag, thinking through my next moves. Zoya would pack up and leave. She was too smart to risk her career over pride. But Darren was a different story. He'd see my ultimatum as a challenge, maybe even a threat to his territory. The note on my windshield proved he was already escalating, which meant I needed to be ready for whatever came next. As I was leaving the gym, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hayes Rellin? Speaking. This is Darren Wilder. I think we should meet. Do you now? Tomorrow night. The parking garage behind the Marriott. Level 3. Come alone. The line went quiet. I stared at the phone, then started laughing. If Darren thought he could intimidate me with some dramatic midnight meeting, he was about to learn how wrong he could be. I called Tom on the drive home. I need you to do me a favor, I said. Tomorrow night, around 9 p.m., I want you to call the police and report suspicious activity in the Marriott parking garage. Anonymous tip. Hayes, what are you planning? Nothing illegal, just making sure there are witnesses nearby when Darren Wilder tries to have a conversation with me. This could backfire. It could, but I'm tired of playing defense. The next morning brought another surprise. My garage bay door had been spray painted with a single word. Loser. I took pictures, then called the police to file a vandalism report. Officer Martinez, no relation to Jennifer, as far as I knew, took down the details and promised to increase patrols in the area. You have any idea who might have done this? He asked. I have suspicions, but no proof. Domestic situation? Something like that. He nodded sympathetically. Divorce brings out the worst in people. You got somewhere safe to stay if things escalate? I'm not going anywhere. This is my place. After he left, I spent the morning cleaning off the paint and installing a security camera I'd ordered online. If Darren wanted to play games, I'd make sure we had a record of every move. The parking garage meeting never happened. When I arrived at the Marriott at 9 p.m., the place was crawling with police cars. Apparently, someone had called in a bomb threat. The entire building was being evacuated. I watched from across the street as Darren emerged from the garage, looking confused and angry. He spotted me and started walking over, but a police officer intercepted him. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw Darren's gestures getting more animated before the officer firmly guided him away. My phone buzzed with a text. This isn't over. I texted back, looking forward to it. The next few days were quiet. Zoya packed her things and moved out without drama. She left the prenup on the kitchen counter with a note. You win this round. I threw both in the trash. But I knew Darren wasn't done. Men like him don't handle humiliation well, and I'd made him look foolish in front of the police. He'd want payback. It came sooner than expected. I was working late in the garage when I heard glass breaking. Someone had thrown a brick through my office window. Attached was another note. Last warning. This time I was ready. The security camera had caught everything. A figure in dark clothing, face obscured by a hood, but the height and build looked right for Darren. More importantly, the camera had captured the license plate of the car he'd driven, a black BMW with dealer plates. I called Tom immediately. I've got him on video committing vandalism. What can we do with this? File a police report. Press charges. But Hayes, this is escalating fast. Maybe it's time to consider backing down. Backing down isn't an option. He made this personal when he keyed my car. And you made it personal when you humiliated him at the hotel. He humiliated himself. I just provided the audience. The next morning, I drove to Darren's dealership. Wilder Luxury Motors was exactly what I'd expected. Gleaming showroom, expensive cars, and a staff that looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Darren was in his office, visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. He was on the phone, gesturing wildly, probably complaining to Zoya about my latest move. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. Around noon, Darren emerged and got into his personal car, the same black BMW from the security footage. Following someone in a small town requires patience and distance. I stayed 3 cars back, taking a different route when possible. Darren drove to an upscale apartment complex on the north side of town. Zoya's new place, I assumed. He was inside for about an hour. When he came out, he was carrying a bottle of wine and wearing a satisfied smile. The sight made my stomach turn, but it also gave me an idea. I drove home and called Uncle Pete. I need to borrow your truck, I said. What's wrong with your car? Nothing. I just need something Darren Wilder won't recognize. Pete was quiet for a moment. Hayes, what are you planning? Nothing permanent. Just want to have a conversation. Conversations don't require borrowed vehicles. This one does. That evening, I parked Pete's truck outside Darren's apartment building and waited. Around 8 p.m., he came out dressed for dinner. Expensive suit, confident swagger, the walk of a man who thought he'd won. I followed him to Rossetti's, the same restaurant where Zoya had wanted to meet. Through the window, I could see him at a corner table, checking his watch, waiting for someone. Zoya arrived 10 minutes later. Even from across the street, I could see the tension in her body language. They weren't celebrating, they were arguing. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could read the gestures. Zoya pointing at her phone, Darren shaking his head, both of them glancing around like they expected trouble. They were scared. Good. The argument continued through dinner. By the time they left, Zoya looked exhausted, and Darren looked furious. They got into separate cars and drove off in different directions. I followed Darren back to his building and waited until his lights came on. Then I made my move. The BMW was parked in his designated spot, gleaming under the parking lot lights. I'd come prepared with a small toolkit and a plan. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would cause permanent damage. Just something to let him know I was watching. I loosened the valve stems on all 4 tires. Not enough to cause a flat, but enough to create a slow leak. By morning, he'd have 4 tires that needed air. Annoying, but not dangerous. Then I left my own note under his windshield. Conversations work both ways. The next morning, my phone rang early. Darren's voice was tight with rage. "You think you're clever, don't you?" "I think I'm adaptable. You set the rules with vandalism and threats. I'm just playing by them. This ends now." "I agree. Stop messing with my property, and I'll stop messing with yours." "It's not that simple anymore." "Why not?" "Because you've made this about more than just Zoya." "Have I? What else could it possibly be about?" There was a pause. When Darren spoke again, his voice was different, worried. "You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "Ask your wife about the Henderson account. Ask her where that money really went." The line went quiet. I stared at my phone, trying to process what he'd just said. The Henderson account was one of Zoya's biggest clients at the firm, a real estate development deal worth millions. I called Tom immediately. "I need you to dig deeper into Zoya's financial records, specifically anything related to the Henderson account." "Hayes, that's getting into dangerous territory. If there's actual fraud involved, then we need to know about it, before someone else uses it against us." Because that's what Darren had just done. He'd revealed that this wasn't just about an affair anymore. There was money involved, serious money, and somehow I'd stumbled into the middle of it. Tom's call came at 6 a.m., 2 days later. His voice was grim. "Hayes, we need to meet. Now." "What did you find?" "Not over the phone. Murphy's Diner, 30 minutes. I'd never heard Tom sound scared before. In 20 years of friendship, through divorces and business disputes and every kind of legal trouble imaginable, he'd always been calm and controlled. This was different. He was already in a back booth when I arrived, nursing black coffee and looking like he hadn't slept. A manila folder sat on the table in front of him. "How bad is it?" I asked, sliding into the opposite seat. "Bad enough that I had to call in favors to get this information, and bad enough that we might both regret knowing it." He opened the folder and spread out financial documents. Bank statements, wire transfers, invoice records. The numbers were staggering. "The Henderson account was worth $4.2 million, Tom said. A real estate development deal that Zoya's firm was handling. The money was supposed to be held in escrow while the environmental impact studies were completed. Supposed to be? 3 weeks ago, the money was transferred out of escrow and into a private account, an account that Zoya had signatory authority over. I stared at the documents, trying to process what I was seeing. She stole $4 million? It's more complicated than that. The transfer was technically legal. She had the authority to move the money if certain conditions were met, but those conditions weren't met. The environmental studies are still pending. So where's the money now? Tom pointed to another document. Offshore account in the Cayman Islands, opened 2 weeks after Zoya's promotion. By Zoya? By Darren Wilder, using power of attorney documents that Zoya signed. The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. So Darren convinced Zoya to steal the money, then he moved it offshore where she can't touch it. That's how it looks. But here's the thing. The Henderson group is starting to ask questions. They want their money back, and they want it soon. If Zoya can't produce it, she goes to prison. For a very long time. Embezzlement of this magnitude is a federal crime. I leaned back in the booth, trying to think. And Darren? Clean as a whistle, legally speaking. The power of attorney documents give him complete authority over the account. As far as the law is concerned, Zoya gave him permission to move her money. Except it wasn't her money. Exactly. But proving that requires proving she stole it in the first place, which means she goes down either way. I understood now why Darren had been so confident, why he'd escalated our little war instead of backing down. He didn't care about Zoya anymore. He had what he wanted. The affair had just been a way to get close to her, to gain her trust and access to her accounts. "There's something else," Tom said. "The FBI is already investigating. Someone tipped them off about irregularities in the Henderson account." "Someone?" "Anonymous tip. But the timing is interesting. It came in the day after your parking garage incident with Darren." The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. He's setting her up. The FBI investigation, the missing money. He's making sure she takes the fall while he disappears with the cash. That's how I read it. And my little revenge games just gave him the perfect cover. While I was focused on the affair, he was cleaning up loose ends. Tom nodded grimly. "Hayes, you need to stay away from this, both of them. If the FBI thinks you're involved..." "I'm not involved." "You're married to the primary suspect. That makes you involved whether you like it or not." I thought about Zoya, probably sitting in her new apartment right now, thinking she was free and clear. She had no idea that Darren had already thrown her to the wolves. When will the FBI move? Soon, maybe days. The Henderson group is putting pressure on them to recover the money quickly. And if Zoya cooperates, if she tells them about Darren, then she might get a reduced sentence, but she'd still be admitting to embezzlement. Her career would be over, and she'd probably serve time. I stared at the financial documents, thinking about the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Ambitious, yes. Ruthless in business, absolutely, but not a criminal. Not until Darren Wilder came along. "I need to warn her," I said. "Hayes, no. You cannot get involved in this. She's still my wife. She's still a federal suspect. And if you tip her off, you become an accessory." So I just let her walk into it blind? Tom gathered up the documents and stuffed them back into the folder. "You let the system work. Maybe she figures it out on her own. Maybe she doesn't. But either way, it's not your problem anymore." But he was wrong. It was my problem. Because while I'd been playing games with tire valves and spray paint, a real predator had been destroying the woman I'd once loved. The affair was just business to him, a means to an end. And now that end was in sight. I left the diner and drove straight to Zoya's apartment complex. Her car was in the parking lot, which meant she was home. I sat there for 10 minutes, trying to decide what to do. Tom was right about the legal risks. Warning Zoya could make me an accessory to federal crimes. But letting her walk into an FBI trap without knowing what was coming felt like a different kind of crime. In the end, I compromised. I wrote a note on a piece of paper from my glove compartment. "Ask Darren about the Cayman Islands account. Ask him soon." I slipped it under her door and left. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Zoya's voice was shaking. "Hayes, we need to talk. Right now." I thought we were done talking. "Please, it's important. Murphy's Diner, 1 hour." She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the same booth where we'd had our last conversation, but this time she looked terrified. "You know," she said as soon as I sat down, "I know some of it." "How much?" "Enough." She put her head in her hands. "I'm so stupid. I'm so incredibly stupid." "What did Darren say when you asked him about the account?" "He denied everything at first. Said I was being paranoid. But when I kept pushing..." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "He laughed, Hayes. He actually laughed and said it was too late to back out now." "Because it is too late. The FBI is already investigating." Her face went white. "How do you know that?" "Because I have a good lawyer who knows how to ask the right questions." Oh God, what am I going to do?" For a moment, I felt sorry for her. She'd made terrible choices, but she'd been manipulated by someone much more sophisticated than either of us had realized. "You're going to get your own lawyer," I said. "A criminal defense attorney. And you're going to tell them everything." "Everything?" "About Darren, about the account, about how he convinced you to transfer the money, all of it." "But that means admitting I stole the money in the first place." "Zoya, the money is already gone. Darren has it, and he's not giving it back. Your only choice now is whether you go down alone or take him with you." She stared at me for a long moment. "Why are you helping me? After everything I did?" "Because you're still my wife, and because Darren Wilder is a predator who needs to be stopped. The FBI won't believe me. They'll think I'm just trying to save myself. Maybe, but if you cooperate fully, if you help them trace the money and build a case against Darren, they might be willing to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "Reduced charges. Maybe even immunity if you can help them recover the money." She was quiet for a long time, thinking it through. Finally, she looked up at me. "Will you help me find a lawyer?" "I'll call Tom, He can recommend someone. Hayes? Yeah? I'm sorry about all of it. The affair, the prenup, the way I treated you. I'm so sorry. I nodded. I know. But sorry wasn't going to fix what was broken between us, and it wasn't going to save her from what was coming next. The FBI arrested Zoya on a Tuesday morning at her office. I watched it happen from across the street, sitting in Pete's truck with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. Federal agents in dark suits, handcuffs. The perp walked through the lobby while her colleagues stared in shock. She'd followed my advice and hired a criminal defense attorney, Rebecca Martinez, one of the best in the state. But even the best lawyers can't work miracles when the evidence is overwhelming. Tom called me an hour later. It's done. They charged her with embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. Bail hearing is tomorrow. What about Darren? No charges yet, but Rebecca thinks that might change if Zoya cooperates. Will she? She doesn't have much choice. The FBI has overwhelming evidence on the embezzlement. Her only real option is to cooperate and help them pursue the larger players. That bigger fish was currently sitting in his office at the dealership, probably watching the news coverage of Zoya's arrest with satisfaction. He'd played this perfectly, seduced a lonely lawyer, convinced her to steal millions, then disappeared the money while she took the fall. But he'd made one mistake. He'd underestimated how far I was willing to go to see justice done. I drove to the dealership and walked into the showroom like a customer. Darren was in his office, just as I'd expected. When he saw me, his face split into a grin. Hayes, I heard about Zoya. Terrible business. You must be devastated. Devastated isn't the word I'd use. No? What word would you use? Determined. His grin faltered slightly. Determined to do what? To make sure justice is served. Justice has been served. Your wife is a criminal, and now she's paying the price. My wife is a lot of things, but she's not a criminal mastermind. That would be you. Darren leaned back in his chair, studying me. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I pulled out my phone and showed him a recording app. The red light was blinking. This conversation is being recorded. Would you like to tell me again how justice has been served? His face went dark. You're fishing. If you had real evidence, you'd have gone to the FBI already. Who says I haven't? That got his attention. He sat forward, the casual confidence evaporating. You're bluffing. Am I? Tell me, Darren, how does it feel to know that the FBI is probably getting a warrant for your financial records right about now? They can't touch me. Everything I did was legal. Everything you did was legal because you manipulated a woman into giving you power of attorney over stolen money. But manipulation isn't the same as consent, especially when it's part of a larger conspiracy. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that Zoya is cooperating with the FBI. I know that she's giving them everything, phone records, text messages, bank statements, and I know that she's telling them exactly how you convinced her to steal that money. Darren stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. No, it's not, because I haven't told you the best part yet. He stopped at the door. What? The FBI doesn't just want the money back. They want to know who else you've done this to. See, they think you might be running a pattern here, targeting vulnerable women in positions of financial authority, seducing them, convincing them to steal money, then disappearing with the proceeds. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because they're already looking at 3 other cases, women in other cities, other states, all of them involved with charming car dealers who convinced them to make bad financial decisions. The color drained from his face. You're lying. Ask Jennifer Martinez. Her husband is a federal prosecutor. He's the one who connected the dots. That was a lie, but Darren didn't know that, and the fear in his eyes told me I'd hit close to the mark. What do you want? He asked. I want you to confess. I want you to tell the FBI exactly what you did and how you did it, and I want you to help them recover every penny of that money. And if I don't, then you go down the hard way. Federal prison, civil lawsuits, criminal prosecution in multiple states. Your choice. Darren stared at me for a long moment. Then he started laughing. You think you've won, don't you? You think you've outsmarted me? I think justice is about to be served. Justice? He walked back to his desk and sat down. Let me tell you about justice, Hayes. Your wife is going to prison, probably for 10 to 15 years, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Maybe, but you'll be in the cell next to her. No, I won't, because I'm smarter than you, smarter than her, and smarter than the FBI. I've been planning this for months, covering every angle, eliminating every risk. Except one, which is? I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. FBI vehicles were pulling into the lot, their lights flashing. You forgot that criminals always think they're smarter than everyone else, right up until the handcuffs go on. Darren looked out the window and went pale. How did you? I told you. Zoya's cooperating. She gave them everything, including the location of your offshore accounts and the names of your other victims. The FBI has been building a case against you for weeks. But you said, I said a lot of things. Some of them were even true. The FBI agents were walking into the showroom now, badges visible, purpose clear. Darren looked at me with something approaching respect. You set me up. I gave you enough rope to hang yourself. You did the rest. The office door opened, and Agent Sarah Collins walked in with 2 other agents. Darren Wilder, you're under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. As they read him his rights and cuffed him, Darren looked at me one last time. This isn't over. Yes, I said. It is. After they took him away, I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. Zoya would still face charges, but with Darren in custody and the money being recovered, she'd probably get a reduced sentence. Maybe even probation if she continued cooperating. Our marriage was over. That much was clear, but at least she wouldn't spend the next decade in federal prison. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Saw the news. Well played. I drove back to my garage and got to work on a transmission rebuild that had been waiting for days. It felt good to work with my hands again, to focus on something concrete and fixable. The prenup was still in my trash can where I'd thrown it weeks ago. I pulled it out and looked at it one more time, then fed it into the paper shredder next to my desk. Some rules are made to be broken, others are made to be ignored entirely, and sometimes the best revenge is just making sure the truth comes out.